Very good afternoon. And let me first thank Professor Doval for really giving me opportunity to be here and the organizers. And in fact, this is one of the very wonderful meeting. As I was going through a program that you have been able to invite basic scientists and clinicians both at same platform. So finally, I think we are making a pathway to really reach somewhere. Multiple myeloma is one such story, where the major progress has happened in the last 2 decades, particularly so in the last 10 years. And there are a number of things which have really happened, and some of these, the knowledge which we have all discussed here, many of those things which also have been applied to the multiple myeloma. Now, this is the one disease which was first, we have a reported documented case in one of the gazetted in 1844, so almost 160 years. So this is the first patient, and this is the actually drawings by the artist. That's how this patient looked like. The bones were so malleable that the patient, like you can see those kind of pictures. And this is one of the famous pathologist actually, Henry Baines Jones, who got the credit. There were other people also who actually described the typical proteinuria which you get in this particular disease because of the light chains. So, but somehow Henry got the credit, the other individual who had published it, in fact, 1 month prior to him, but somehow it could not get. The myeloma is one disease which generally is considered to be less common and more so particularly in Asian countries. And you can see this data from the Japan, parts of China, and also comparison with the Europe and US. You can see the incidence both for males on your left side and both for females. The incidence is significantly less in the Asian countries compared to the Western world. And this is the similar kind of data from India too. The incidence is almost 1.2 to 1.5 per 100,000. In fact, in Delhi, we have a database from the various population-based cancer registries. Delhi has the highest incidence of these 6 population-based registries in India compared to the other cities. So almost 1.8. And what we have noticed over the last 5 years or so, that gradually there has been more number of cases of myeloma occurring and reporting to our center, just because of just better diagnosis. But my guess is that probably also the incidence is gradually rising, and maybe in next 10 to 20 years time, we would probably be reaching towards we are a bit towards the Western world. So we are heading towards them. Myeloma accounts for almost 16% of all lymphoid malignancies, and this is the second commonest hematological malignancy after non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And these plasma cell dyscrasia, which includes, apart from multiple myeloma, which is the prototype, which almost like 84% of the cases out of like about 604, which we've seen almost 15 years time at our institute. The other members in this group are like amyloidosis, primary amyloidosis, Waldenstrom, or which is also called IgM type, and Poem syndrome. Then there are some other rare, like you have MGUS, plasmacytoma, and plasma cell leukemia, and so forth. Now, and this is the typical, you may have seen these pictures, like you have typical rouleau formation in the peripheral smear if you make, you have typical plasma cells, large cell eccentric nucleus, and typical lytic lesions in the X-ray. You can see those small spots or in the long bones, and what you have the monoclonal protein in the serum or in the urine or in the both, in almost nearly 80% of the cases. In 14% or 15% you may have only in the urine, which is called the light chain myeloma. And uncommonly you can have these kind of typical unusual presentations. You have big tongue, macroglossia with bluish patches. This is typical of primary amyloidosis, or sometimes you can have a deposit which may mimic like a breast cancer. In fact, this was thought to be breast cancer, but then when we did the final aspiration biopsy, and turned out to be plasmacytoma. And this is one of the case of, you can see the typical fluorescence, Congo red stain in case of primary amyloidosis. So there are subtle differences which we have noticed in India, which compared to the Western world, like in these patients of multiple myeloma, the median age in our country is almost 10 to 12 years younger in India, and we have almost 12% of people under the 40 years of age compared to 2% in the Western world. And this is one of the largest series from Mayo Clinic published almost 7 years back. And we have a higher proportion of the patients coming with the symptoms like classical, the bone pains or backache, anemia, and renal failure. So all these three, the cardinal symptoms of myeloma, they are seen in much higher proportion of percentage of patients in our population compared to the West. Maybe this may probably people come a little late to us. We have more with the more advanced or more symptomatic disease. And one of the reasons why we have younger patients in our population is you can see the population distribution which we have in India. Like this is the data from SEER data from US. Like we have very small population of the 60 years or 65 years. So all our myeloma, they come much earlier. We have 85% of patients under the 65 years of age. Normally the myeloma is considered disease of old age. But in India, you have hardly very few patients, like only just 15% of people who are more than 65 years, compared to what you have almost 65% in the Western population. So in India really presents you a very different spectrum of disease in this country, and you have more young people and more volume of disease at the time of diagnosis. Now, what really had changed in last 20 years, you can see this curve, this again from Mayo Clinic, this data from nearly almost 2,500 patients. And what they have analyzed from 1970 to year 2006, you can see the almost till about nearly almost 1990, from 1970 to 1990, the curves have been same. There has been no change in the survival. But what really happened in the between 1990 to 2000, curves start getting separate, and then in the between 2001 to 2006, the curve has gone up. So there has been the disease where the median survival used to be 2.5 years till about 1990. Some of those who have studied during that time, the myeloma was considered to be incurable. It is still called incurable disease, but the median survival has gone 6 to 8 years, which used to be 1.5 to 2 years till 1990, 1995. Similar to this, on the right side, it's data from our own center. This is data from the transplant patients of 170 patients. And what you can see, the patients who were diagnosed earlier, who underwent transplant in the till about 2000, then between 2001 to 2005, and those who have been after 2005, the survival gradually have been improving. And a number of factors are account for this, like the learning curve, plus the availability of the drugs, all these things, they have been responsible for this. So the number of things which really have changed, why the survival has improved, our biology, the understanding about biology of disease has improved. We have learned all about these with different pathways, different molecules, which may be blocking these pathways. We have new kind of spectrum of drugs which can help us to really treat this disease. And number of these drugs, these are the major development which have taken place in the last 10 years, immunomodulators and proteasome inhibitors. And of course, we have autologous stem cell transplant, and some of these understanding that about the cytogenetics, phase, and some of those how to better characterize it in the response terms and so on and so forth. I'll very briefly just try to touch some of these things. Now, the basic, the biology of multiple myeloma, that's the plasma cells, malignant plasma cells arising from the germinal center B cell. Now, myeloma is a disease. What we see actually as a florid disease, what I've shown you some of the pictures, is not actually what you really see, what it is to begin with. This is what we really see the myeloma. I've shown you some pictures. What is considered that probably the patients of myeloma, they start having disease 10 to 15 years earlier, even longer, with the so-called the monoclonal gammopathy of uncertain significance. So if you do the population, like if you do the M protein for all people in like about 50 years or 55 years, you'll find 1% of community population would be positive having the M protein. And if you follow these people over the next 10 to 20 years, each year 1% of them will convert into the multiple myeloma. So therefore, like MGUS is so-called the precursor of the myeloma, which over the time goes into multiple myeloma. You can have a small fraction of people with features of myeloma, but smoldering, very slow kind of thing, do not require immediate treatment. And some people can just bypass, can develop a soft tissue deposit in the chest or in the nasopharynx or respiratory tract or in the bones, or rarely about 2-3% can have such a violent course, they can just come back with the so-called and the plasma cell leukemia. And during this process of over the 15 to 20 years time, the number of genetic changes which keep on happening, number of genetic events, the accumulation of genetic events which takes place, and which finally guide that why this changes development of multiple myeloma. And also, as it was just said in the previous talk, the microenvironment interaction which takes place, and this is like actually, so far we always thought this myeloma is a disease of plasma cells. Yes, it is of course a disease of plasma cells, but in addition to plasma cells, what actually were in the bone marrow, this is the microenvironment which is really responsible, the so-called the bone marrow vessels, the other supporting tissues in the marrow, the fibroblasts, the bones, the cortical bones, some of those cells. So these are all release of number of cytokines and number of these other cells which finally give you the responsible for this kind of picture of multiple myeloma which we normally see with these kind of thing. And one of the investigation which have developed in last 10 years is the serum-free light chains, especially the patients who are non-secretory, about 3% of those who are non-secretory. This could be one of the very useful tests where the serum and urine electrophoresis is negative, then this can be really very useful. Now, the treatment of myeloma over the last 150 years has evolved. Almost the alkylating agents, when they were discovered first time in 1940, for 100 years there were no treatment actually. And this is the first treatment, melphalan and steroids, with 1950s. This became the backbone, which is still one of the backbone for especially in the old age patients, along with the modulating this. And so-called the novel agents in the last 10 years, which really have changed the natural history of multiple myeloma. So currently the model for treatment of myeloma includes the induction therapy, the initial therapy, what we call induction, followed by consolidation and maintenance therapy. And consolidation, particularly the patients who are young, under 65 years of age, no major comorbid conditions, we normally give them 4 to 6 cycles of this various combinations, and I'll show you. Then if they respond to the treatment, one can go for stem cell transplant treatment. And these are the various combinations of new molecules I told you, immunomodulators, either thalidomide, lenalidomide, along with the steroids or proteasome inhibitors like bortezomib, or one can use 3 drugs, or sometimes people are also using 4-drug combination. And as a result, you are able to achieve complete and very good partial, which is more than 90% improvement in nearly about 40 to 70% of patients today. And if you include like more than 50% improvement till almost nearly 90%, which used to be less than 50% overall or less than 5% complete response till before these drugs were discovered. So the major change really has happened because of this. And there is a very clear relationship in the progression-free survival. If you achieve complete response or more than 90% improvement, the progression-free survival is improved. And those who are elderly, those who are not a candidate, like somebody is 70 years, 75, not a candidate for stem cell transplant, then along with the melphalan prednisolone, one can combine the thalidomide as a drug, or also one can combine the lenalidomide along with this, or one can combine bortezomib. So these are the various options today are available in the treatment of multiple myeloma, even for the people who are elderly and not candidate for transplant. 20% of people come with renal failure. So again, for them, we have either high-dose dexamethasone initially. When they come acute renal failure, then we give them as a pulse, or combination of chemotherapy drugs, which is still used occasionally. But what we more popular today is like the bortezomib and dexamethasone. This is one of the combination which gives almost nearly up to 20 to 30% of people achieve complete response, that all their bone marrow and the electrophoresis report, they become normal. And this is one of the study which one of my colleague, Dr. Siddharth, is doing in the department. We're trying to compare cyclodexa and thalidomide with bortezomib dexamethasone. So far, in a small number of patients with renal response, myeloma response, the result seems to be similar in both. Stem cell transplant, just a glimpse, like you collect the stem cells from peripheral blood by mobilizing stem cell from bone marrow to blood with the help of these machines which are available everywhere. and this is how they look like. You characterize them by with the help of flow cytometry, GD34, then they can be infused, and so on. And this is what it looks like. Once your stem cell transplant has been done, if one achieves complete response, and you can see the survival. More than 15 years of follow-up, the survival for patients, overall survival is nearly more than 50%. So today people, those who achieve, we have treated with the initial treatment, have undergone stem cell transplant, and if they achieve complete response, the long-term outcome can be expected beyond 15 years for this particular group of patients, which is something not really, people never thought it will be achieving that kind of improvement. And even the progression-free or event-free survival is almost nearly about 22% of people continue to without requiring any treatment beyond 15 years, those who achieve complete response. So the stem cell transplant also has contributed a lot, especially for the younger patients of myeloma. Some of the traditional prognostic factors like anemia, renal failure, and M protein, type of protein, and staging, all that, which has been there in the, what we really have today is that the how we stage, the so-called international staging system, which takes only just two simple parameters, beta-2 microglobulin and albumin, and cytogenetics. And now if you see these two parameters, one can really divide them into three categories, and based on the, like if you have an albumin level of more than 3.5 gram, or beta-2 microglobulin is just less than 3.5 milligram, then the median survival is very, very high. So it's possible to predict today the outcome of an individual case just based on these two simple parameters. And again, if you do the FISH study for these patients, because conventional cytogenetics is not so easy in myeloma because the proliferation rate is very slow. So, but in these, if you do the FISH, then these are certain sets of patients, like almost quarter of patients, if they have these abnormality, they are considered to be so-called high risk or poor prognostic. And these are the patients who probably needs very, very aggressive therapy compared to the patients who are in this category or those who are in the intermediate category. PET scan, I think today in malignancy, nothing will really complete till you have a PET scan because everybody will come with the PET scan. This is sometime PET scan is useful. In fact, there are recently some of the papers, like if you can show the response on PET scan. PET scan helps to pick up additional lesions than what we have the conventional skeletal survey, which is still the gold standard for multiple myeloma. But this is the one patient which shows, like if you have bulky soft tissue involvement here, which shows it, and this is after the treatment, which has responded to the treatment. So PET scan really helps in that sense. But still, so finally the goal of treatment in multiple myeloma is control of disease. In the process, you try to achieve complete response or near complete or very good partial response, which is more than 90% improvement. And this has been translated into the prolonged survival, and a small fraction possibly get prolonged outcome more than 15 years, which can be considered to be as a, what we call it technically operational cure. So therefore the treatment approach, if you achieve complete response, one can put them on maintenance, very small dose of these molecules, and if they relapse, then one can go for transplant. Those who do not achieve complete response, they are less than complete, then one can give them consideration for with the stem cell transplant and followed by maintenance. This is one of the thought process currently going on and being tested in one of the randomized trials. And those patients who are young, one can give them induction, maximize response, go for stem cell transplant and put them in maintenance. But those who are elderly individuals, you can achieve response and then you try to keep the maintenance, try to maintain the quality of life without just with the, so they don't have the toxicity of the drugs. So therefore the myeloma today offers a possibility of options of treatment, and we can individualize what we call it personalized therapy. For example, somebody comes renal failure, then you have a choice of drugs, that these are drugs to be used. If somebody has a who has a high risk and already had DVT, deep vein thrombosis or thromboembolism, then there are certain drugs which can have these problems, then one can use this particular combination, which has a very least possibility of developing the thromboembolism. And occasionally people like diabetes who may already have neuropathy. In those patients, one can use this combination because the risk of neuropathy with other drugs is there, but this particular combination gives you the least risk of neuropathy. Similarly, those who have extramedullary myeloma, I showed you the small first fraction do come with that, then one can use really this kind of combination which have the best response. And again, one will have those the high risk cytogenetics, then these are the drugs which really provide you the best chance of achieving outcome with the new molecules. So the myeloma today has become a kind of chronic disease, and one can really achieve, plan out the treatment and individualize the treatment in these patients based on this. And apart from that, the list which I have already showed you some of the data, the one thing which one can really, again very exciting in last 2 years, that we now have the IL-6, which is one of the major cytokine in multiple myeloma. Now the people are trying to, randomized trials are going on against antibody against IL-6 receptor, along with these molecules and seeing like bortezomib. And hopefully if this gets better results, then we will have the next few years time, probably will be seeing some of these presentations and using the antibody for treatment of multiple myeloma. But thank you so much.